May my words be a blessing for the memory of Kavod Harav Mordechai Eiliyahu, Zefet Tzaddik L'Kodesh Livracha. I remember the first time I met the Rav. It was in a very dark and a very dangerous place, the worst prison in the United States, Marion Penitentiary. And its reputation was well deserved. So you could imagine how I felt 3 stories underground, never seeing the sun, never breathing fresh air, never really seeing anybody else except the guards that would come by, when suddenly Kavod Harav walked in to a very small visiting room, and I looked up and there was the Rishon LeZion, which was it was an amazing experience for me, because it was at that moment I could actually see freedom. That's what that's what his visit represented. Because I said to myself, if the Shaliach of Hashem, such a man, such a great man, can visit me in Gehenna, then Hashem will be taking me out. Because no Shaliach like that is just going to leave someone like me in Gehenna. So for the first time in many years, I could actually see freedom, I could taste freedom, I could experience it. And that's what his visit meant to me, freedom. What a lot of people don't appreciate is that the Rav had an incredible sense of humor. And when he left, he turned around to me and he said, "Don't worry, like Yosef HaTzadik, you'll get out of the bore." And I said, "No, Kavod Harav, I don't want to leave the bore like Yosef and go home to Eretz HaKodesh in a casket. I would rather just go home walking." So he laughed, and it was a measure of his greatness that he could actually, even in Gehenna, see the humor in that and laugh with me. When he would visit me, I remember the first time he visited me in my next prison, which had a lot of Muslim prisoners in there. He came in his full robes of the Rishon LeZion, and it created quite a stir in the prison amongst the Muslim prisoners. Very few of them or anybody else in that prison had ever met a Jew. I was the first Jew that many of them had ever seen in their lives. And the word suddenly spread in the prison that a grand mufti had come to see me, because that's what he looked like to them. So after Kavod Harav left, the imam of the prison called me in. He had just arrived himself, and he said, "Did you get a visit by a grand mufti today?" And I said, "Well, he was a grand rabbi. I don't know if he was a mufti." So I explained who Kavod Harav was to him, and he said, "Well, don't explain the difference. Just let the Muslim prisoners believe that a grand mufti came to visit you, because they'll leave you alone." And so here again, the Rav's very presence conferred protection on me for 20 years. This misunderstanding was never corrected, and as each successive Muslim prisoner came in, they always came to see me to find out how it was that a grand mufti came to see this Jew. So I blessed the Rav each and every time that happened, because it was as if he was putting his arm around me, as if he were having the Shekhinah put its presence around me and protect me the whole time that I was in that institution. When we used to talk together, I was absolutely amazed at his detailed knowledge of almost everything that was happening in our country, down to the smallest detail. But it wasn't just that he knew these things, he understood the importance of these developments within the greater context of our people. Every single thing that the government did or did not do, the Rav had an opinion. And it was an informed opinion, and it was an opinion from heaven. And his absence right now is so sorely missed. You almost cry at the vacuum he left in our religious life, but also our political life when he departed. I don't believe he's gone. It's 11 years. I understand that in human terms. I understand that. But in Jewish terms, he is still here. And why do I say that? Because he left us a legacy, not just with his sons, not just with this wonderful yeshiva, but in his writings and in his opinions, his understanding of halacha. Whenever my wife Esther and I have a question about anything having to do with halacha, it's always to his books and his writings that we turn, always, without fail. And every time we do that, we're having a conversation with him. We try to understand how he got to his position. We try to understand his thinking. We try to understand where he's going and the implications of his rulings. So it's as if we're learning with him. And this is, again, the greatness of the man, that his opinions, his ideas, his understanding of halacha are as relevant to us all today as they were when he first articulated them 11 years ago. So we mustn't think that he's actually gone. I don't believe that. He's still with us. He will always be with us. I remember that when I went to his kever, I sat there and I couldn't believe it, because I had hoped and prayed for so long that he would be there, standing, alive, to greet Esther and myself upon my arrival in this country. But after I got over the shock of seeing the kever, I could still hear him. I could still remember exactly our conversations and his opinions and his humor. And I suddenly realized that, yes, he might be gone in the physical sense, but in the metaphysical sense, he's still with us. And that gave me some degree of comfort and peace at the time. So going forward, we're in very difficult times right now. And I don't know if it's going to get any better before the Geula. May it come soon in our lifetime. Amen. But during this process, this horrible process that we're all experiencing now, we have to remember we have someone who gave us a glimpse, just a glimpse of what the Geula will be like. And as we go forward through this terrible time, we have to keep Kavod Harav's memory, his words, and his stature and his bearing foremost in mind. As he always told me, this is our land, God gave it to us, and we must show no fear before our enemies, ever. So on that note, I'll conclude my words and hope that all of you will realize that we have been blessed, our people have been blessed by the Rav, his teachings, and we continue to be blessed by his family as well, who are carrying on his proud traditions. I realized that over the 3 decades that I was in prison, there were many people who davened, who prayed for my release and repatriation to Israel. And I want to take this opportunity to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all of your prayers and tefillos, because it was those prayers and tefillos that helped get me home. The 2 agents who did the heavy work of bringing me home were, of course, HaKodesh Baruch Hu and his shaliach, my wife, Esther Yocheved. I've told people many times that there were 2 things that kept me alive for all those years that I was in Gehenna. One of them was the hope of returning to Eretz HaKodesh. And the other one was the hope and dream of returning to be with my wife. As you know, the Americans refused to let us have children, which was probably the cruelest thing they could have done to us. But both Esther and I do have children here. Every time we walk down the street and we see children, it reminds us of God's blessing. Not just on the families who have these children, but on Esther and myself who have the zchut to be alive here in Eretz HaKodesh, to see these children playing and laughing and running through the streets of Yerushalayim. It's hard for a husband to express in so many words exactly how important and how dear a wife is to him. But the best way of saying this, so that everybody understands this, is to address the husbands. When you look at your wife, or you listen to your wife, you have to understand that she is your honor. She's your future. She is everything that makes you good in life. And so, whenever you look at her, just bear that in mind, as I do every time I look at my own wife, Esther Yocheved. Thank you.